This is the fourth in the series of lectures, Marx Comes to India. Today we will speak of Debiprasad Chattopadhyay, a philosopher and a Marxist. He was born in Kolkata in 1918 and died in the same place in 1993. A brilliant student of philosophy, he studied in the Presidency College and Calcutta University, getting first in the first class in both BA honours and MA examinations. And later, after moving about, he joined the City College, Kolkata, and retired from that institution in 1978. Debiprasad is known mostly for his work, Lokayato. It was one pioneering work by a Marxist that led to a renewal of interest in the materialist tradition in Indian philosophy. Generally speaking, the school college textbooks speak of materialism only as a side stream, the mainstream being spiritualism, idealism of different sorts and all that. The reverence to the Veda constitutes one of the major planks of Indian philosophy. This was the way that philosophy was taught and is still being taught. Debiprasad started with the premise that materialism was not just a side stream, but a vibrant philosophy in India, a system that had its text and followers. The book Lokayato was not exactly a book of philosophy. It provided the materialist basis of materialist philosophy. So it concerns more with anthropology, sociology, history, and the like. The influence of George Thomson, the British Marxist, is of course very much noticeable, and he never denied that the mentors he had, like George Thomson, Joseph Needham, and those books which had helped him most, mostly J.D. Barnell, his study of history and science, science in history, and last but not least, the works of other Marxist thinkers, mostly of the British origin. This is how, from his college days, Chattopadhyay was groomed to become a philosopher, although in the 1930s and early 1940s, he was more interested in poetry and later on in literature for the children, or rather adolescents. It was only in the late 40s that he really started writing on philosophy, but even then, there was no definite direction. It was after 1951, at the instigation and request of Bhavani Sen being the shortened form of Bhavani Shankar Sengupta, a leader of the Communist Party of India who had led the left sectarian stage in 1949 and continued till 51. There was a polemic against Chattopadhyay by Sen, and later on Chattopadhyay also rejoined by providing an article criticizing Bhavani Sen's study of philosophy. The matter came to a close when, after the change of the party line, Sen one day met Chattopadhyay and told him that we cannot expect a renewal, a rejuvenation of the Indian people if they are made to stay in the same kind of ideas that had nourished them. So a change was necessary, and he requested Chattopadhyay, because he had the acumen, to go for a renewal of the studies of Indian philosophy, particularly the materialist tradition. This was really the turning point in Chattopadhyay's life. From 1951 onwards, he seriously studied Indian philosophy, all the branches, all the sects, all their followers, commentaries, and right from the 50 years 1952-53, he started writing in Bangla and then in English about the materialist tradition. This culminated in the publication of the Bengali book written in Bangla, Lokayato Darshan, which came out in 1956. This book created a sensation and came to be regarded as a handbook for all young Marxists. This was not only a revival but a proper appreciation of the materialist tradition. Chattopadhyay had to fight against two standing prejudices. One was that materialism was hedonism and nothing else. As in Europe, so in India, it simply spoke of the enjoyment of life without any higher pursuit. And then materialism was dead in India. There was no trace of it in the historical times. Against both these prejudices, Chattopadhyay came out with enough examples to show that materialism had been and continued to be a living philosophical system which had its best texts, its commentators and followers. This was more or less accepted all over the world. The book was appreciated by most of the Marxists in India and abroad. There were, of course, a few dissenting voices, and a set of reviews published in the British Marxist journal, Marxism Today, proved that he had his critics as well as his supporters. The supporters, of course, meant some very big names like George Thompson, who defended Chattopadhyay, and there were also critics like the Russian student of philosophy, then pretty well known, Anichev. It was again Joseph Needham and J.B.S. Holden who wrote appreciative letters to Chattopadhyay, and these things boosted up his morale. He started exploring the philosophical tradition almost exclusively now. He was previously known to be a writer of children's literature, as I have said, the adolescents' literature, short stories, not poems anymore, but essays meant for young readers, and then very popular books. Several series like Janbar Katha, that is a book of knowledge for very young people. Then there was We Too Can Become. Then there was What is Science, and several such series about history, about geography, about people's ideas, including philosophy. This is when, in the late 50s really, that Chattopadhyay became a figure in both English and Bengali literary world for his works on philosophy. His Bengali book had already been published. A series of essays in different journals were later on collected, and finally, after his Lokayato, he came out with a big volume called What is Living and What is Dead in Indian Philosophy. This book was received with open arms all over the world as a major contribution to the Marxist interpretation of Indian philosophy as a whole, not only of the tradition of materialism. People's Publishing House then commissioned a popularizer, a short title which would inform the reader, the unacquainted reader, with the different schools of Indian philosophy. This led to the publication of Indian Philosophy, a Popular Introduction. The book provided the much needed summary versions of several philosophical schools, not only of the Vedic ones, but also the non-Vedic ones, particularly the Buddhist and the Jain variety, not to speak of Charvaka Lokayato, the materialist tradition. In his late years, Chattopadhyay shifted to a study of the history of science, and this culminated in the 1980s when he started writing a history of science and technology in ancient India. This was his preoccupation in the 1980s until his death in 1993. The three volumes first provided a Marxist view of the development of science and technology, not just science, not just technology, but joined together. He gave the study a new orientation by starting not from the Vedas or the Vedic society, but from the pre-Vedic Harappan civilization. The first volume contained a short introduction by Professor Joseph Needham. Needham was a modest man, but never untruthful. In all modesty, he wrote, he had previously thought that he knew something of Indian science and the history of Indian philosophy. But after reading this book, this first volume of the history of science and technology, he had come to understand how little he really knew. This was a tall praise indeed, and Debiprasad never looked back. The reviews published in Nature of the first two volumes also increased the stature as also his prestige. So Debiprasad is now known both as an exponent of the materialist philosophy in India, as also of providing a new model for the study of science and technology in India. In fact, this model can be used for other countries in South Asia, the same kind of countries which had a very, what you might call, hopeful beginning, but ultimately could not provide the outcome that was expected. Needham's work on China, Science and Civilization in China, a multi-volume work, had always been his inspiration. But having an inspiration is not all that he needed. He needed real groundwork, groundbreaking work. And this is what he started with the help of other collaborators. Collaborators ranging from students of anthropology, Sanskrit, sociology, history, ancient Indian history, as also those who knew about technology proper, about the use of iron, for example. And archaeology became his main preoccupation in these days. It is very difficult to summarize Chattopadhyay's contributions to Marxism. He was truly a creative Marxist who had not only assimilated Marxism in his own work, but given a new orientation to it by providing a new model for the study of history of science and technology. The books are still available or mostly available, and anyone who wants to follow his line or just to study the history of science and technology in a country like India must have a look at these volumes. To sum up, we may say that Bhupendranath Datta, Rahul Shankrityayan, D.D. Kusumbi and Chattopadhyay, Debiprasad Chattopadhyay constitute the four pillars over which Marxism in India now stands. Our duty is to study their works more and more, and it is by studying them, I don't mean just any one, but all of them, that we can really learn how to apply Marxism to the Indian conditions.